Hey everyone, welcome to the 484th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by a longtime patron, though never mentioned before, Tyler Small. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Enlow. Today we've got Kelly Christensen on the show. He's a producer. He's worked with Oren a ton of times. He listens to the show, which is nice. But he's got a ton of awesome experience, specifically in the world of commercials. We talk about what makes a good director in the eyes of a producer, what makes a bad director in the eyes of a producer, and what makes a good producer in the eyes of a producer. It's a good conversation for sure. Lots of nooks and crannies that we dig into, some great war stories, and it's just another fun conversation with a person who's kind of been in our orbit for kind of a while now.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd say you and I also talk, especially me, a lot about what makes a good producer. And I do wonder if, like, when you are talking about yourself, kind of, if that's a hard question to answer. And then he's like, nah,
yeah, it's could be.
I think maybe because we have a podcast, we would be really comfortable telling people what we think makes a good director, because we've talked about it ad nauseum for 10 years. But I think if you have an actor on the show and you're like, hey, what makes a good actor? And they'd probably, their instinct would be like, someone that like knows how to act, takes direction, and
listening. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, look, 10 years of podcasting has made us a little bit more concise when it comes to certain questions.
Yeah. My favorite part was when you said there's 3 types of something, of a producer, because I feel like you never do that. And I'm always doing that.
Yeah.
It seems like you're trying to become me with the mustache, the complaints about life, the gastrointestinal issues. Anyhow, I really like Kelly as a producer and as a person. He's really funny and interesting and cool. And do we have anything else to tell people? Maybe about our Patreon?
Patreon.com/JustShootItPod is a place where you can throw us a buck or two. Oren, do you know how many paid patrons we have right now?
I have a feeling that it's above 100 and under 200.
It is below 100 now.
Oh, it is.
It's slow. We have 134 total, 90 paid.
Oh, interesting.
So we have 90 paid. We are grossing $266 a month. That is
gross.
Less than the show costs to make every single month, for sure. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because our 500th episode is coming up relatively soon. By the end of the year, we will have hit 500 episodes. We will also throw a cool party. We were in the works on throwing a really cool event. I'm dropping the gauntlet right now. We are setting the goal. I would like 200 paid patrons before that 500th episode. Or we stop.
Or we stop the podcast. Thank God.
Stop the podcast.
Finally, a reason to stop.
Yeah. Just permission. Just sweet surrender.
Okay. If you don't want us to stop the podcast, become a patron.
Become a patron. Any tier level, and you will get the inside scoop on some new stuff that we are rolling out, and also a very cool party.
The party of the century.
That's right. Of the decade.
Of the decade. That's worse than the century. Cool. Okay. Patreon.com/JustShootItPod.
Yeah, throw us a buck or two.
I think you know this, Matt, but you know that Kelly produced a ton for Paul Briganti, previous guest.
I don't think I realized that, actually.
Yeah. And he's,
a lot of tough cookies.
Yeah. When he produces for J.J. Adler too, like kind of some of the comedy comedy directors.
When did you? I'm such a huge J.J. fan, so I want to talk to you about that for sure. But what did you produce for Paul?
I did. I remember we did a massive MasterCard. We did 2 MasterCards.
Gotcha. So his commercial stuff at Tool, basically?
Yeah, Tool.
Gotcha.
I've never done, I've only done advertising. As a PA, I, got into, film and music video.
Sure.
But my production career is advertising.
Yeah.
What's the music video you're in? You're always telling us?
Oh, I was Kevin Brady, an AD that Oren regularly works with, was ADing a Foo Fighters video for Sam Jones is directing. And I like the Foo Fighters probably more then than I do now, but
sure.
I was a Foo fan, and Kevin and Sam, I'd worked with Sam Jones as well. So they both knew me, and I was actually on my honeymoon in the Caribbean, and I got a call from Kevin, or a text from Kevin and Sam, and they said, hey, Sam's doing a Foo Fighters video and we want to put you in it. It was fun. I got to actually, there's the shot of Dave Grohl going into the restaurant, and I played off of him when he walked in, and that was like my moment with Dave.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
cool. So put you on the map.
Not that he remembers, but
Matt's wife sometimes does some acting coaching.
She does. And I teach commercial acting.
Oh, yeah. And Matt also teaches the class.
So,
and I think, Matt, I really love that you guys are production partners together. Like you were talking about the film you produced for her that she directed. I mean, it's great it's nice for me as a producer to hear that directors sometimes get out there and produce. So you see,
roll your sleeves up. But then again, Kelly, to your point about like producing, you are reminded of why you need to have two parties, right? Because if one person is their only priority is making the creative good, and the other party has to be the voice of reason of like, hey, the sun's going to go down, or hey, we don't have the money to do it that way, or hey, if you do more of this scene, it's going to cost you on another scene, or whatever that is, you know? And so every time I do it, it does remind me of how hard the job is, and how
the job of producing,
and also how, like, you know, you became a producer because you love film and TV and commercials and media. You know, you love making things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is a funny thing to feel like sometimes, yes, you are empowering an artist for the most part. That's most of your job. But when it comes time to actually shoot, sometimes you do have to be the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And especially when, you know, it's an artist you care about, like you're married to them. That's pretty fraught,
exactly.
You know? That's you know.
That has its pros. That in some ways that could work, in some ways it couldn't. But you know, I know, Oren, the question you sent me ahead of time is what makes good directors, what makes good producers. And I think what we're talking about is collaboration is important, because collaboration gets you to a point like, you know, idea A and B that we have, and we just keep bumping them up until we get to a better place. And Oren, that happened. I mean, it happens. I'm sure it happens almost on every job with us, but I remember specifically when it happened on our last project together in Toronto at lunch. We, you know, it was that collaboration with not just you and I, but also the AD who was 9 months pregnant. She was great.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever? We should have gotten her
sent her a
onesie too, or
right?
I guess it's not.
I know. Well, I told her on Instagram, congratulations, Bailey. She's great. I work with her a bunch of times. Yeah.
But with her and our DP also, it's like we collaborated together. And I remember going into that conversation, I was my stress level was up, because this is not what any of the three of them want to be doing right now. Maybe not Bailey, but you know, you've been shooting and trying to get things done. And so when I went, you know, I don't know, I remember I was walking around with the foam core boards, with the frames, you know, as lunch is starting and the crew's leaving. I'm like, all right, guys, can we talk about how we're going to make the rest of the day work? And we got down to it, and, you know, a little bit of back and forth, but we came out with a plan. And that's what's important, not just at that moment, but at all moments of production, and not even just between directors and producers, but even creative types as well. And I think collaboration is very important. And you know, obviously, I've had to learn through my career is, you know, how to handle that. It's never a personal thing. I have an end goal that's going to be a little bit different than a director, because they have a vision of what they want to do. But I'm like, you know what? We don't have a time for that vision. So can we talk about this and work to get to a point where it makes sense and we're happy and moving forward, and you feel even better. So I think what makes a good director, what makes a good producer, I think that's one of the most important elements.
But that's why I think, you know, when I said I think Kelly's like an A+ pre-production guy and an A production guy, is because, on set, sometimes it is a little stressful, and there is a little bit of like, hey, we're behind, and this is like an issue. Like, you got to kind of figure out how to get through this faster, you know, or there's this issue or there's that issue, or like, you know, it's just a little more stressful. But in pre-production, that's like when we can say, like last year we did a spot that, you know, took place in a kid's birthday party. But the agency and the client didn't want to put any kids in it. And I was saying, like, I think this spot really would work much better if there were some kids in it, you know, and it was a SAG spot, so there were some issues. But I think most producers would go to the agency and say, hey, you know, Oren really thinks like that we should put some kids in it. Can we try to move some money around and do things like that? And the agency would say no. And then the producer would be like, sorry, Oren, we can't do it. And that is what happened in this case, but I feel like we kind of you and I just kept going back to them over and over.
And you're like, eventually got the kids.
We ended up not getting the kids, but to me, it's less about whether we got the kids. It's more that knowing that I wasn't alone in the fight. Because as a director, a lot of times you're kind of fighting for this creative thing, and the producer is like the voice of reality, right? But I feel like you, Kelly, you're pretty good at, you're like, yeah, it would be better with the kids. Let's see if we can do it. Like I brought it up to them. If you want to bring it up to them and let's do this, and I can do the budget and we can move the budget. And it's like, that's the collaboration and pre-production. Cause I've worked with so many producers that are just like going through a checklist. Hey, okay, Oren, you got to do the storyboard. It's like, okay, here's a storyboard. It's great. I send them to they're kind of like just middlemen that are just sending things from agency to production, but they're not inserting their own taste or opinion or trying to help the director, the filmmaker, make something good, you know?
Well, and in their defense, and Kelly, I can't wait to hear about this, but like, that's out of experience because like, you don't want to overcomplicate an already grossly overcomplicated chain of command. Do you know what I mean? Right? Like there's so many voices already chiming to your point earlier of like, oh, there's 16 stakeholders. You need client and creative director and executive creative director, all these people to approve just a location. And the director's already picking a fight about the location. So I'm sure over your career, you've seen people and been the person who has spoken up and then regretted it for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
So why did you decide to speak up in that instance?
Yeah, I mean that's just one example. Like he's done it in like 100 different ways.
Yeah, when you decide to speak up, what is it? What's the motivation? Where you?
Well, you know that it's right. It absolutely makes sense. I mean, honestly, with a director, in this case, Oren, being so close to the creative, he caught it before I really did. And I remember that particular job was one of those, like, it was, my time card had 7 days on it. It's like went that quick. We were up and running very fast. So there's the producer stuff I had to get going. But when Oren had brought it to my attention, like, I'm like, yeah, this is obvious. Why are we not having kids back here? You know, my first thought is I'll bring my kid, you know, but that's SAG. So that complicates it. Obviously there's costs, but when it's something you believe in, for me, regardless of what it is if I understand it and I'm like, I got to fight for it. It's easier for me to sell it through. And unfortunately we didn't that time, and we did beat that horse dead, but it's just something you're confident about that you need, that you know would make this thing better, make it a better sell, make it a more interesting end product too. I think the idea, and it came out really good. And in the end, it came out fine. But I think it would have been a lot better if we had kids running around in this chaos in the background.
6 kids would have
literally would have made a massive difference. So it's easy to get behind that. And there's times when there's things that I don't.
Can I ask a question? Actually,
yeah.
Did you consider like young SAG actors? Are there any other actors in the could you have
no, it wasn't about them being kids.
18-year-olds.
It wasn't about them being kids.
It was just about any other person.
Yeah. It was how many SAG talent total across the campaign they had, and they wanted 3.
Yeah.
And where they're airing it is residual. But there have been situations where both, you know, from what I see is, you know, coming from above me, directors or executives at company that want to fight for something or you know, push something. What becomes difficult for me is when I can't get behind it. Like I know agency, I know they're not going to go for this. I see where these creatives are struggling with their client and there's already a battle there. And if I go in and make it worse, but when I'm asked by a director or an executive to do that, I do. It's a little bit harder when it's something I know it won't work out. And it's a little unfair to do to my side as well, because I'm not putting up that fight. But it just, I think, naturally happens. If you know something doesn't make sense and you have to go fight for it, it does make things tougher for me. It's one of the harder things I think on my job is like,
can you think of a circumstance where like you fought for it, even though you were like not totally sure about the creative decision? Do you know what I mean?
From either side?
Like if a director pitches you something and you're like, I don't know, but they really want it, so let's give it a college try. Because certainly I can think of circumstances where, on the flip side, someone is upset that a creative decision didn't get pushed through, right? And they were like, "Oh, like I couldn't get people to align on it, or I didn't have the skills."
I mean,
it
happens in casting all the time, right?
Casting's a great.
Yeah, I've got this happened with Paul once, and another actually recently. Directors recommend cast. I mean, they're part of the process because they know the level of acting and response that someone auditioning has and will provide, but because they might not have the right skin color, or they look to this or they look to that.
Age is really a big one too.
And so what happens is we'll spend a couple hours putting our recommended cast together with the creative team, and then they take it away from us to the client to present, which again, it's they need their space to present. And sometimes we get back, oh, this person didn't look right, so they changed them. I know Oren, I'll often say, hey, heads up, this is what they changed. And I've had 3 jobs, and probably more if I was to think about it, where the acting in the director's POV wasn't considered, and it just didn't work out. Like this actor came on set and they weren't right. Just because they looked right, it just didn't provide the performance that you needed. I worked on a project last fall that the director fought on the casting. Client was someone they wanted, and after a few months of editing, they went back and reshot.
Reshot the spot.
The spot with a different talent because they were right. And I unfortunately wasn't available to do the reshoot. I was with Oren on that
Tropical
Smoothie adventure, and but the director, speaking with him, he's like, they're paying us to reshoot, and we don't feel bad about it. It was the performance, and that it was on them for picking that actor.
It is something I've learned, that casting as a director, sometimes you do have to remind them, like, hey, just so you know, I've auditioned 5,000 actors. I've called back 1,000 people. I've done this so many times that, like, maybe, just maybe, you would consider my opinion a little bit.
I mean,
I'm not saying I'm the be all end all, but I have about 100 times more experience than the client and the agency in this field.
Not to derail us too much, because obviously the ideal scenario is that you're sending them 3 great choices, 3 people that you really like.
Right.
Why, Oren, do you feel like sometimes people are on the list that you don't want to cast in the first place? Do you know what I mean?
Well, because the agency, I'm not the only one making the list that goes to the client. Like the agency is involved. They're usually at callbacks. Yeah. I've had them cast people that weren't even on the list at the end. They've gone back to the tapes and gone back to see the auditions.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. And it's 9 out of 10 times it's a look thing. They like someone's look. I flew to Thailand to shoot that job. They recast my lead while I was on the plane to somebody that did not speak English anymore, and I couldn't communicate with them, like, on set, and they didn't have an interpreter for me.
I mean, knowing you, it's fine.
Yeah. I've been told by many people, I did a whole movie that with a mostly deaf cast. I've been told I'm like one of the least expressive. I have one of the least expressive faces.
You got a face for podcasting, Oren.
Yeah. So communicating physically without words is really hard for me. But I guess kind of going back to answering my own question about what makes a good producer, and what I love that Kelly does is, I just feel like you're very, like, there's kind of 2 types of producers. There's the ones that have the checklist. Let's get casting, boards, locations, wardrobe, crew, all the stuff. Let's go through the checklist and just, schedule it all, get it all done, right? Regardless of the creative. And then there's the producers that are like, hey, for this, the casting is really important. The location is really important. This element is really important. The agency is really concerned about this. Director, how do we address this more carefully? And like when we shot Target, it was all these dogs. We're filming with all these dogs in Target. And, when we show up to the location scout, Kelly shows up with like 4 stuffed dogs, to take photos. I don't think most producers would be like, oh, hey, I brought a bunch of like stand-ins, for you to shoot these shots that you're going to pitch to the agency. So I think just like those details, and Kelly, I mean, I don't know if this is giving away your trade secret, but I think I mentioned it before. You're really, like, oftentimes you will kind of buy some merch that's related to the client, and that like, like you're right now wearing a McDonald's shirt
this
that you probably
shirt is super
wore
cool
on a McDonald's shoot, right?
You're loving it.
Yeah.
And it's like those little details of like,
wait, sorry. Just to spell it out. You're saying, for instance, on a McDonald's shoot, you buy a McDonald's t-shirt in advance and you're wearing the McDonald's shirt.
And he buys one for the director too.
Yeah. The client, like, it's for a few bucks. The client's happy.
Yeah.
And actually, in the case of McDonald's, I always go to the brand website to see what they have. Some cases I end up on eBay, like Purina. That was an eBay find. That
and everyone's stoked when I show up wearing the Purina, like an unbuyable Purina shirt.
And also, you don't have to think about what you're going to wear that day. Right?
Yeah,
exactly. And
on Target, we had the employee shirts that we were wearing.
That's funny.
I know. I put that on, and I tell people I work there. I tell Julian, my son, I tell him that I work there. But it's an employee. I went to the Target site, and those are shirts that store managers buy for their employees, and they're next to nothing. So McDonald's, I have this McDonald's shirt on, and they have all this, like, they had a page of all this like retro stuff. Like, this is the old French fry logo. I mean, this stuff's cool. I wear it all the time. And the director, I got her hoodie, and from the 80s, it was a big logo that was tilted to the side that said Big Mac. And, it just looked cool. And, it usually isn't too expensive, but it goes a long way.
And it fuels the excitement about the project.
Yes.
It makes it personal.
And just, I always say that, like, I think that people's minds are made up about whether or not a shoot went well pretty early on, right? Like it's not about how good the spot turns out. If people have a bad time on set, even if the spot is awesome and wins a bunch of maybe if it wins a bunch of awards, people have amnesia. But people are checking in with each other throughout the day. They're texting people, they're stepping away for calls, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So like anything you can do at the top of the day just to buy a few brownie points, right? Wear a hoodie that shows up on a couple of set selfies or whatever. Like that's an easy win. That's pretty smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do, just to add to that, I don't like, if I can't find anything good or it's like bad or not right, I brush it aside. Like the last project I was on, the brand wasn't a good one to wear the swag on.
Philip Morris.
That would be super cool. T-shirts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The other, also going back to like working with directors, another thing I do is, when I work with new directors, I have to figure out like what's their level of willingness to collaborate, or how much do they want to hear from the producer. So I always tend to stand back a little bit. And this is probably where I get my A+ from, because I let the director work with his production designer, who's typically earlier on the project too, and then work with the DP and even the location scouts. And I don't try to interfere, because also during that process, I'm getting up to speed on the entire project, and I haven't been with the creative as long either. So I'm more observing. And the more that I work with a director, the more I understand their approach, and then would, in pre-production, probably bring up a little more, of my opinion. But I don't like to get too involved, because there's a process happening. And if I see something like going south, I'll say something. But I think that's where the A+ comes from, because I could sort of let everybody do their thing. And if something's too expensive, or this location's too expensive, or I'll call it out. But otherwise, you like to have them have the space to figure it out, because I'm tracking at what point we need to have a final decision, or how it will affect things. Keeping us more or less on schedule in the pre-production process.
Right. But what you would do if a location was too expensive that a director loved, I think you would either be like, okay, let's see where else we can save, or you would say, well, what do you think? I'll have our scout try to find more locations exactly like this. Or you'll say, well, if you want, we can like make a pitch, and we can go back to the client or agency and see if they agree with you that we can get a little more money for that. It's not a no, which like I feel like a lot of newer producers or younger producers, or just more jaded producers, will be like, I don't want to deal with this. It's a no.
What I'm hearing is that essentially there's two reasons people don't push back. Either they're scared or they don't want to deal with it, right? It's a pain in the butt either way, right? And I think that, Kelly, it sounds like you're just willing to like stick your neck out a little bit more, because it's worth it, right? And like, I think there is that threshold with with all positions where you go from just being grateful to be there, right? Just like so happy to be there. I'm so glad I got the job, to like kicking yourself for not speaking up over a few years of experience, to being like, oh, it's not that bad. My job is to speak up, right? To protect the integrity of the project in one way or another, right? So it sounds like you're over that hump. You're like, hey, my job is spending a couple of $1,000 more on the better location, guys.
If it's worth it. Yeah. And the other thing too, Matt, is I'm also with experience, I'm comfortable like admitting when I'm wrong. And that's happened.
Sure.
And it's like, and I can even be an asshole on set sometimes. That I love it if you prove me wrong. And I mean that.
Like, it's going to take us too long to rig this thing that you think we have to have.
I'm sure you've seen this, but I'm like, I think this is going to take too long, but prove me wrong. If you guys want to go ahead, prove me wrong. I love being proven wrong, honestly, because my job to keep things, the creative integrity, but also keep it on schedule, that challenge doesn't always give me a clear head on execution. I'll honestly admit that. All my years of doing this, I'm in Video Village, then I'm on set. Nowadays, you kids are all texting each other, but directors and production designers are texting each other, and I'm not in the loop, and or DPs, and that's fine because they are creatively working things out. But again, if I don't have the information, and the director and the AD or the DP or the production designer is confident they can do it, and I let them, it's kind of a little passive aggressive of me to say, I'd love to be proven wrong. Do it. Go for it. Prove me wrong. I've never had a bad "I told you so" experience my whole life. That's never happened. But that's one of those things.
I don't mean to be such a Kelly stan, but the other kind of thing that you were saying that like when you start with a new director, you're like, let's work with whoever you want to work with, which I feel like you've done with me too. But what's nice, Matt, and I don't know if your experience is the same, when you work with a producer that's been producing for a bit, almost any DP I name, you'll be like, oh yeah, I've worked with them. I almost worked with them. They did this. Like, kind of everyone. And like, if you need a production, I'm like, Kelly, I need a production designer that can build a set that kind of, rotates, on its side. You'll be like, okay, yeah, I did that 3 times. Here's some people, or my friend did that. Like, you have such a Rolodex, but then also, like I feel like these spreadsheets are super valuable that you've made for me. Like sometimes we did a job where we needed someone that can do comedy and like beauty, amazing shower scene, makeup scene, like beautiful people, but also comedy.
But still funny. Yeah.
Which seems kind of like the opposite. So I was like, who's a DP that can really kill both of these things that I'll be happy with on the comedy side and the client will be happy with on the beauty side? And Kelly just called like 10 agencies, made a spreadsheet for me, and he's like, here's 50 DPs, here's their beauty reel, here's their main reel, and here's like some and I was like, it would be nice to know what, like, I don't even know if I said it or you just sent it, but it'll be like some interesting credits or some other directors they worked with. And actually David Volrath, who shot Tropical Smoothie Cafe for us, the only reason he made my short list was because one of the details was, he works with Najib Tarazi a lot, who is another director I know. And I called Najib and I was like, what do you think of David? And he's like, oh, he's amazing. So like, it's like all those things. Sometimes as a director, you feel like you're just on an island. I mean, Matt, you and I have talked about like DPs to hire like recently, like multiple times. So it's nice when you just have someone else like, hey, how about this person? How about this person? How about this person?
Well, and so my question specifically, it sounds like you just called all of the agencies and then put together the list. Are you sorting through? Are you pulling your favorites? Are you like editing people out, or?
Well, it's funny. After I joke, it's been 4.5 years. My very first producing job was 2003. I was production supervising. I had an opportunity in 2003, and it was not a small job. It was a 1-day shoot, but I've been doing it full time since about 2007. I think when I went full on producer. So, but I'm sorry, Matt, you just asked. Oh yeah. So I have relationships, even as a production supervisor, I have relationships with these agents. It used to be more on the phone, but now obviously it's email and Google. I love, the Google Docs and the Google Sheets that we now have this archive of each job. It's not just Oren I do these sheets for. I do them for myself, honestly, to get the list. And depending on the director and the company, run it through the executives. If they have anybody they like, I tend to mark ones that I've worked with and liked, whether they're right or not. because again, I think
a lot of times you'll be like, he's amazing, but he's kind of slow. She's really good, but her availability is kind of, iffy on this one,
Yeah. And he knows I have relationships with a lot of agents that, it's the other thing too, agents, because of my relationship with the agents, many of them will just pick up the phone and call me too when they see, because they want to sell their client and they want to talk. Sure. They want a little bit more information.
And they also know that you work a lot, so maybe they'll give you a deal on this one because they know that you'll come back.
Or just take you seriously, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I often wonder that, Oren, like, do they, how much do I work compared to other people? I mean, I feel like I'm pretty lucky, but there are other producers out there that, are they more in the mix of like, these are who the agents really want to impress? I've always wondered where I stood with agents as far as, how they see me as a producer. It's funny. One of those things I've often thought about.
You always wonder.
I think in commercials.
I guess I shouldn't really.
I think in commercials, agents like to get a call because the day rates are pretty good, even on
pretty good. Yes, exactly.
I think there's 3 tiers, and this is me purely bullshitting. So
I love it when you make a listicle on the spot.
But I think that the tiers for an agent as they regard producers, casting directors, and the like, there's never heard of them, like not working, right? And then like, oh, working, and then cream of the crop. Do you know what I mean? Like the triple A's. And I think that 99% of the people who are working are in that middle section. And then there's just like, fresh faces. So it's for the most part, I think it's a binary. It's either never heard of them or like, oh, let's make the phone call. And then there are the people who they would bend over backwards for. And I'm sure there's gradients within that big middle. But for the most part, I feel like it's like, yeah, they're working. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let's get them the job. You know what I mean? Oh, Kelly's calling again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my
I agree. And it doesn't matter in the end. But I do from time to time, because it's funny, just when you're always emailing or talking to somebody on the phone that you don't get to see in person regularly, and it's always important. Anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead, you kind of triangulate
inside
those
track.
Things. Yeah. In a way that I don't know if a cold call would get the same result.
I just reminded me, this part we can't put in the podcast, but if I have to tell Matt what happened on this job. Sorry, this is the most animated I've been in the best story, but we can't put the story, obviously. I just had to share that one. It just reminded me of that. But
that's so funny.
Yeah, stop me if I told you guys this story, but this is the most embarrassing. I definitely, on a job, basically like mooned the video village. Like I was like setting up a shot, just like bent down. My pants were just too low. And I only know that it was really bad because multiple people went over and like kind of whispered to me like, hey buddy, like you should pull your pants up. Like 3 or 4 people, like the EP did it, the head of the company, like a bunch of people came over, all kind of deciding like, oh, I should, this is so embarrassing. I can't say it in front of everybody else. I'm going to pull them aside.
Right.
Pretty
That's
rough.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. On set, there's so many embarrassing moments with actors because the cameras sometimes are just locked in place and then they're just like pointing at a person's private parts or something, and you're like, can you move the camera? Can you do this? Like, or, obviously sometimes people are laved and they go to the bathroom and all that stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities for embarrassment. I did a Zoom call. I don't remember if I told you, Matt, but it was a pre-production meeting, but half the people were on Zoom and the other half were in person. And when you're in a room with like a bunch of people with laptops and you're all on the same Zoom, like you end up kind of like shutting the mics off. You kind of use one computer. And so I had my laptop. And so I'm like, well, I guess if I'm talking into somebody else's laptop that was sitting next to me, I'm just going to fold the screen down, but I don't want to like completely log out and turn my computer off. So I just folded it like mostly down. And I didn't realize it was just pointing at my crotch, the camera, MacBook, like for half the meeting. And then people were like, my phone, I kept getting texts and I kept not looking at them. Finally, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, guys. And it's like, or your camera's pointed at your crotch.
Funny. That's really funny.
I mean, should we turn this into like last week was what makes something cinematic? How about what makes something embarrassing on set?
Sure.
just to get back on track for a second, or not for a second, but just to get back on track. Kelly, I had my other question I wanted to ask you is,
what do you like about working with me, Kelly?
not me, but you've worked with so many great directors. I mean, just so you know, Kelly's turned down multiple jobs I've tried to get him on.
Sure.
But what, like, can you just...
What are the things that you've noticed? What are the
what
commonalities amongst the people that you like to work with the most?
And I mean, you know, I'm most interested in the directors that actually make things that are great, you know, but also that make your life easier, which it might be completely opposite things.
Well, I think one of the things that makes it easier for me on a production, I also think actually benefits the director. And that is creative collaboration with the agency and being open to what that creative team has to say and their point of view. Because I've had some instances where the directors just don't even care. Like they're like, no, and you know, it's typically the older guard, but not always. And it's funny, many have come from advertising backgrounds too. But those, I think being a director who collaborates with the agency obviously makes things, it takes pressure off of my job a little bit because there's a lot of communication, but it also helps them as well because agencies do notice an asshole. And look, sometimes things get heated. And, you know, I've had agency producers say, look, I understand that, you know, why the director's upset. You know, we're going to them for their vision and execution. And so that's always helped. I appreciate when an agency producer acknowledges that instead of, you know, everybody getting defensive. But I also see his longevity. A lot of successful directors I work with, you know, guys who I've worked with who have been doing it for 30 years, their longevity is the way that they collaborate with the agency creatively. And they have, you know, reasonable conversations about why something will or won't work. And Oren, I've seen that in you, you know, just because you're so level-headed about everything, you know. I mean, you're not, there's no sacrifice either. You know, I've been on projects where it gets to a point and directors and even the executives at the company, they're like, just don't care, give them whatever they want. And we're taking the money for this, which is unfortunate because you always want to make things as good as and as interesting as they can be. But I think, yeah, as far as making it easy on me is the relationship that they have with the agency.
Yeah.
And the willingness to talk to them and be reasonable about their time and schedule, as we should get that from the agency side as well.
And then what about directors that you think end up making really good work? Is there any commonality or something that...
There is no commonality. I don't find a commonality. I think the different characters, you know, all of the successful directors that I work with, you could point out something here and there, but that they're good at, but I can't say that there's consistently one thing about all of them. You know, I can say, oh, these two directors are good with casting. This one is always, you know, hiring the right DP, or, you know, this one's great with agency. I think, again, falling under the blanket of collaboration, I think that's important to longevity and to making good product as well. Trusting and trusting the people you're working with and collaborating. I can't really pinpoint it on one thing.
Yeah, I've met a lot of...
Yeah, I was gonna say, have a great mustache.
Yeah,
that's new to me, Matt. I
have a developing mustache.
I did notice Matt is kind of, ever since I started growing my mustache, now I notice his mustache is a little more prominent than his beard too.
My mustache is the exact same length as the rest of my beard. It's just that I have more gray in my beard.
I'm the same.
It's just kind of, yeah.
I am the same also, but it is more noticeable today.
It's literally the same length. I think it maybe just grows in thick though.
I think that producers do a lot of stuff that nobody realizes, you know? And I think if you are trying to get into commercials, well, sorry, let me rewind this a tiny bit. About 3 years ago, and I'm really bad at guessing when things happen, but Matt might correct me. We had a conversation on this podcast where I was just complaining about every single shoot I had that year, where I was like, I just can't make anything good. It's like the client's coming in and they're telling me to have the actors, they do this performance and it's really bad. And then we don't have time for me to do my version, or I want this. And that, you know, I just had a laundry list of issues on every shoot. And Matt said to me, well, it sounds like your problem is you just don't have a good producer. Carlin might have been on the podcast too. And
I think she was.
And she might have said like, yeah, it sounds like, and I was like, what are you talking about? I have great producers. I work with great producers all the time. And then
to be fair, I just to clarify, I didn't phrase it that bluntly, but like it sounded like a lot of the struggles you were having, a producer could help with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It was like creative differences, it was like timing, it was budgets, it was all these things. I mean, I was also probably at that time working in this pretty tricky budget range of the like $100,000 commercial where you really don't get to do everything you want, you know? But then we finished recording the podcast and it came out, and then Jordan Brady, our friend who's been directing commercials for like 30
said Matt was
years.
Right.
Yeah, he emailed and said, hey, it definitely sounds like you don't have a good producer.
Yeah.
So flash forward to now, 3 years later, where I've worked with a lot of great producers, including you, Kelly. I think we've done like 5 or 6 jobs together. And now I don't have like any of those issues. And I think that even me, who had, you know, I've been in LA since 2005, directing more or less full time the whole last 20 years, didn't realize even 3 years ago that like a good producer can make the difference between not just my experience on set, because I don't really care. I like to have a fun, nice set. And I, you know, obviously the cliche is like the no assholes thing. That's nice. But what I really care about is making good work. And I felt like I was kept being set up to not make good work, you know?
Yeah. I would say that, just as a slight addendum, because you've worked with lots of you worked with great producers back then, but like knowing to turn to a producer for this problem, I think is a muscle that we continue to develop.
Interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
And in the commercial world too, I work with the incredible producers in the narrative world, but it's different when everyone's like really passionate about the story, or when you're trying to sell, you know, tax, like that, for someone to do your taxes or whatever, you know?
When did you notice, Oren, when you, you know, this shift in the relationship with the producer, that things got better? Like, what did you notice was different that you didn't understand before?
I don't know. Like I did, you know, when I was at Great Guns, I did 2 jobs with them, and I had pretty good producers. My first producer, though, got COVID right before the shoot and wasn't even on set, you know, and it was a job in Nashville. So I never really quite got to bond with him. And then my second producer was for that Rebel Wilson job I did, which was kind of like the spot that elevated my career. And he was great, but I think I was maybe a little too new to everything. Like I never, you know, I was barely in the DGA, barely done any union shoots, never hadn't really shot like a real thing on a backlot. Like just all these little details. And my EP, who, you know, is quite an intense person. And I didn't really attribute like much of the success or failure to the producer on that one. But then when I moved to art class, my first job with them was with Michael Montenegro for Bark Box. And he was really great. And he's like, you're going to love art class. And everyone, like my first AD was Kevin Brady. And everything just kind of seemed like a little more of like a greased system of things. Everything was working. My EP, Rebecca, was like, you should hire this DP. He's not just makes beautiful stuff, but he's really fast, and that's what we need. And it just kind of, I felt like, oh, like I'm not the only person on the team, you know? Like it's not me against the world. And then when I got Target, I think that's the first job we did together. Art class was like, we got to get you a really good producer for this. It was like
the
third job. What was the first job we did?
Popeyes. And then
but we booked Juniper,
the software.
Popeyes. Yeah.
Juniper, Popeyes, and then while we were in Mexico, I heard about Target.
Oh yeah, Target. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so but our first job was Juniper. It's Christina Hendricks in Mexico. Decent budget. It didn't even come in for me. It came in for Vince Pion, who's like kind of the guy that owns art class. But he couldn't do it, and somehow I managed to convince him to let me shoot it. And they're like, okay, Oren got this job. That's the bigger job he's gotten here. We should give him like one of our bets, the best producer we can get him. And they're like, here's Kelly. And then I think just as a testament to kind of how good you are, like I also got Popeyes, the Jimmy O Yang one, that had to sneak in right before we went to Mexico. And you they're like, we'll just have Kelly produce that as well. And that was like also the first time. And then you produced my next job. So we were doing 3 jobs together. So you were juggling my schedule too. And you were helping me. I was like, and even if I did a non-art class job, I'd be like, Kelly, I have this non-art class thing where I have a pitch thing and a tech scout. And you were just helping me do my schedule. And in the past, I'd always just been like, the producers were on the other team.
That's a great example. The schedule is a really great example of a thing that you wouldn't loop someone in. I have to schedule with Oren all the time. We talk once a week for an hour plus. So like, if you don't let your producer know, oh, hey, I've got this other pitch that I need to work on, blah, 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 then all of a sudden, Oren's just flaky. right?
Right.
He's just like unavailable for 2 hours.
Showing up late or not
so it's
completely
what's going
there
on, or
mentally.
stressed out or whatever. Whereas if your producer is looped in, then you two are aware together of like, okay, he needs X number of hours to work with a board artist on the next job or whatever it may be. And so I think that maybe honestly is also partially thanks to exclusivity with a single company. Like if you're with art class and all of your jobs are art class, then it's a hell of a lot easier than if you're like, hey, disparate production companies, I'm kind of triple dipping because that's how our lives work now. And you kind of don't want to tell each other, like, because you want everyone to feel as though they have 100% of your time and brain.
But that's the thing. Like every job I'd ever done in the past, I got a job through a company and they gave me a producer. So I didn't even realize, like, for years that I could have some input on who the producer is. Like I always thought the producer is on the side of my employee, my employer, not me. And so even with Kelly, I believe I had like a sawhorse job or something else. And I would be like, I have this other job. It's not an art class job. Like, can you help schedule her? And you're like, yeah, sure. I'll tell them. Should I tell art class about it? Like you were like helping me. And I felt like for the first time you were on my side. And then even budget wise, I was like, what's the budget? Do you know what my rate is? Like, I was like, oh, like I kind of had just in the past been like the producer is representing the money and I'm representing the creative. And we're trying to kind of come. And I felt like, so I kind of feel like when I started art classes, when I truly felt like I was in lockstep with the producers that they gave me. And so, so I think that was kind of like a little bit of a paradigm shift. And now I like to lean on my producers. And Kelly, you do things I've mentioned on the podcast that no other producer has ever done for me. Like you'll send me lunch when I'm doing remote casting,
Kelly, he loves that lunch.
I mean, that's like
and
literally
I do it to everyone. I've had directors, by the way, tell me that's ridiculous. Why would you want to do that? It's like,
no,
by the way, it's me asking you and the production supervisor executing, or I'm on, Uber Eats, which takes all of 7 minutes, which
but it's the thought that counts,
And
well,
it's
also,
funny,
sorry.
I was going to say regarding schedule and calendar, every job I'm, sharing the Google Calendar with everything that the job requires. And then whatever director I'm working with, I'll do a separate calendar with their non-job schedule. And it may help the director, but it helps me huge amount. If I'm on the phone with a client or an agency and they're like, can we get Oren on the phone to talk about boards? I've got a calendar right in front of me. I'm not with his other jobs, his other pitches, what he's doing, and it makes it easy for me. So one of the first things I do is set up that job calendar. And to JJ's credit, when I worked with her recently, I asked her if I could set one up, and she's like, I already sent you my calendar. She does it herself. So,
nice.
Which I'm happy to do that. Good. Saves me time. I don't have to do it. I've got the director doing their own calendar, and I love that. I love that she does that. If you want to start doing that yourself, Oren.
No, I mean, I have one. I can share it. But the other nice thing about Kelly is that he has a wife and a son and a life. You go to a lot of concerts. You have so many friends. You go to their birthdays and weddings and events. You take your son to places. You go to see movies. You travel. And like that makes, I've worked with producers where I'm like, sorry, my daughter has this like recital I would like to go to. And they're like, well, it's the only time the agency can meet, And like, I feel like it's nice when a producer is kind
understands that you're a human being.
That there's like a life to live and that, and then in the same way that you send me lunch, that's like that human part. When I'm sick, you send me some $80 concoction from Air One to try to heal me. When we were in Mexico, you brought me the IV drip.
Okay. Kara did call me to make sure we did the IV drip. I'm sure I would have gotten there, but Kara got there first for credit. And Matt, for the show notes, maybe I can send you this Air One thing that cost $80 because I'm telling you, it knocks a cold out of you.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. But also one of the other, all these things I consider, I have to give credit to production supervisors I work with. They also remind me that those things are helpful to you guys and Christina or Libby or Jen, these production supervisors I work with, they're covering so much for me too that allows me to have the time to remember, to get to these little details or to help me execute those smaller details. So it's not when you talk about a great producer, you're also only as good as the people that support you. And I had a period of my life and my professional career where I would bring on, friends that could do the job. And I found that it didn't work out for one reason or another. And it's not, although all these people I name are my friends, but the buddies isn't always the best thing. You have to do what's right for you to protect yourself and build the right team. I think that's very important. So as a successful producer, I can't take all that credit myself. It's really the team that comes with me too.
The good producer knows that the team matters, knows that the DP matters, knows that the designer, the stylist matters. And then like the other thing that you do all the time is you'll either pick me up like to go to a scout, where many producers will just meet us. Here the addresses. Or you'll send a PA on a shoot day to like pick me up from my house or at least offer it,
That way, he'll be on time.
Exactly, Matt.
Sure, there's that too, but it's still a whole thing. Remember
roasting.
I said, Kelly, if you want any corrections of our podcast, I remember this is the first thing that came up is I had mentioned that you sent a PA to pick me up for the night shoot so that I don't have to drive after, a 12-hour overnight night. And Matt said, I don't know if you remember, Matt, like
I do remember.
What did you say?
I said that I said something to the effect of like,
that
that
PA's
kind of
exhausted.
That sucks for that PA. Yeah.
That sucks for the PA. They're exhausted.
Yeah.
And then Kelly texted me angrily saying,
angrily with the emojis like, of the red face.
Tell Enlo to go F himself. Well, so
Who
Kelly,
though?
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Enlo.
Yeah. What does he know? So why? Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why it's actually
the reason you're wrong, Matt.
Yeah.
No, and it's funny. Driving home from Long Beach tonight, listening to last week's episode, I paused it to tell Kim this exact story again, my wife. You know what, Matt?
Like, Matt this guy said.
So what happened? Yeah. So it's basically the PA that would pick up the director. Your concern is it sucks for them. They've been working these long hours, but really the PA doesn't. The PA starts later. The PA's, as much as 2 hours before Oren and 2 hours. Stay 2 hours later than the director. In this case,
so they're actually their day gets shortened.
Their day gets shorter, and knowing that it was that particular job was an overnight, we make sure that they sleep and everything. But fair to call it out, just unfair that I wasn't there to defend it.
That's why we had to have you on the show, Kelly. Don't worry.
I know when I'm working with Oren and I'm listening to the podcast, I don't know if he told you this, but I'll sometimes forget whether it was a conversation we had or it's something you guys were talking about, and I'll bring up something as if, wait a second, were we talking about that, or did I hear you guys talk about it? I can't remember. That's happened a few times to me. Something that comes with age. I can't remember the conversations I have.
It's happening to us on the podcast all the time recently. Like Carlin just was like, hey, this person just texted me this one sentence comment and I have no idea what he's talking about, Or
I think the act of podcasting is very different than having a real normal conversation. You know what I mean? Like there's like you're hosting. So like, I never remember what I say on this. Like, so yeah.
My friend Julie, I don't know if she's listening, but she texted me the other day. She's like, who was the director? Like, and I was like, who was the director of what? The director that you were talking about on the podcast. And I was like, which director? The one whose name you wouldn't say. Like, I have no clue, and it's because people are hearing us so present and we sometimes record them and don't release them for like weeks. Anyhow, well, Kelly, if you're not available, right? If one of our listeners, you're too busy.
Yeah, you're booked.
No, I'm holding, but I'm currently available as of Sunday, July 13th, because I just got back from family vacation, Florida. Did I tell you, Oren? I was on
the Disney
cruise ship where the little 5-year-old girl fell off. I was on the boat when that happened. You guys, did you hear about that, Matt?
I did hear about that.
Yeah, and her father jumped in after her.
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah.
They both survived. And there was a moment where I was watching the rescue because we, morbidly everybody, when the crew is running to the port side of the boat, the rest of us, got up to watch, especially after my Dole Whip with a rum floater. I was ready to. And you look out to this ocean and the boat's slowing down and, they're throwing all the life preservers out, all the big red life preservers, Matt. And I'm like, I don't see the people by the life preservers. They were throwing the life preservers to try and track the tide of where it was going so that the rest of the crew who was available would look out and spot them. And I don't know if it took a while for them to spot them or what, but it took probably 15 minutes before the rescue boat went out. Not putting any responsibility anywhere. They did that for whatever reason they had to. But until that boat got out and you could see where it was going, then you could see, I see a little black head. And it wasn't a black person. It was just, that's the color of it against the ocean.
Sure.
And it was that point I walked away. I'm like, I don't know if this guy's dog kid is alive or not. I just I walked away from watching it. It shook us up.
That's harrowing.
It shook me up. Yeah, it was.
It
was crazy. But fortunately, it was a day at sea. The boat wasn't going fast, so they didn't get sucked in underneath, I'm told, and they both survived. But
that's awesome. Did everyone on the ship cheer when they were brought?
They were all cheering. You know what happened, Oren? I was so like, when I turned to walk away, when I saw that rescue boat going up, there was a guy standing. We were on the 12th floor, the top of the boat that was open. There was a guy standing on a lounge chair so he could see above everybody looking. I just walked by him. I go, dude, get down so you're not next. I just out loud. It was very upsetting that these people went overboard, because those rarely come with a happy ending. Those stories like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was on that boat. So I was on vacation. Then I went up to New England to see my mother, and I just got back. So I'm not working right now. I missed a couple of beautiful opportunities. So I'm as of July 13th.
What kind of jobs? Yeah. What does a job need to have to get Kelly Christensen to produce it?
Good people. Honestly, I love working with friends I've made, and I love making new friends. I love, the last thing I did, brand new production designer and DP I'd never worked with before. And it was a couple of great people now that.
Who were they?
I look forward to working with again. Sean Porter was the DP.
Oh, dude, ASC guy.
Have you worked with him?
Legit. No, he's been on my dream list.
And Kai Boydell was the production designer who was, both of those guys were fantastic. It was actually
Sean Porter shot 20th Century Women and Green Room and Green Book and Skeleton
and Green Book, yeah. Sick. And I have to tell you, Sean on The Scout, and not to diss other DPs, but he was really doing a good job of marrying narrative and visuals, the story and the visuals in ways that you don't typically hear DPs talk. It really came from a place of
storytelling,
visual storytelling, right? Which is what the medium is. It's visual storytelling. And listen, a lot of DPs often don't say things like that for the same reason I don't say a lot when I'm first working with a director. I just let them do their thing and see what they have to offer. So, if it sounds like I'm blaming, accusing DPs of not speaking out, I'm the same way as a producer. But
if people want to follow you or follow up on you or kind of see, do you have a website? You ever work? Instagram?
I don't. I've never needed a website. I've just always been lucky to get referred word of mouth. And I've always started one. I've got this Instagram page that's Kelly. It's called Kelly's Producer Work, and I've got one job up there, and I've never public. I just
Kelly,
never have the time to.
That second job is going to come through one of these days.
So how do people find you?
Yeah, my phone number is
Kelly. You're at Kelly Man.
Kelly Man on Instagram. But yeah, kellyman@mac.com. And
well, Kelly, do you have a few more minutes to hang out and endorse with us?
Yeah, can I get some water?
Unpaid endorsements.
My unpaid endorsement, I'm going to go back to one of my favorites. We talk about The Town all the time. It's our favorite podcast with Matt Bellany. One of his very first episodes was with producer Jason Blum, and it really got me hooked on the show. I love Jason. I love his approach to movies, his excitement, all of that stuff. So his company Blumhouse produced Megan 2.0, which was a pretty huge flop.
We haven't been able to see it, but my son and I were big fans of the first one.
Big fans.
We were away when this one came out, and it just
well,
flopped.
You're part of the problem, Kelly. No, it's so yes, Megan 2.0 flopped pretty massively.
Blum went on and talked about it with Bellamy. I haven't heard it yet.
Exactly. Yeah, he was really excited to talk about it because people, they talk about their successes all the time. And so one of our most prolific and vocal producers in Hollywood talked about all the ways in which they messed up. And so I think those two episodes is kind of in dialogue with one another, I think are really interesting. But at the very least, listening to Jason Blum opens up about Megan 2.0 flop, the Blumhouse slump, and bouncing back, I think is not just a great conversation about a specific movie and a specific company, but also kind of about indie film at large right now and what it takes to make a successful movie in this day and age. So that's my endorsement.
Yeah, I love that podcast and Matt Bellany. I know you guys were mentioning last week Kim Masters and Bellany when they always what is it?
Partner in banter.
Partner in banter. Yeah, I love that. You guys acknowledge that. But yeah, Matt Bellamy, I love his podcast, and I cannot wait to listen to this one. It's on my list of just as soon as I catch up with Just Shoot It, I'm gonna up on the town.
Keep your priorities straight there, Kelly.
That's a good one. But did you didn't see that film, did you, Matt?
I did not. I will wait till streaming.
Did you like the first one?
I liked the first one. Yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah, it was fun.
My wife doesn't love that style of movie, so like I tend to watch them, alone. So I'll get to it eventually, though. Yeah, Kelly, what you got?
My unpaid endorsement is the streaming service Canopy with a K.
Yeah. Co-sign for sure. Yeah,
Canopy has it's free. I think in most places, if you have a library card or if you're a student, a lot of universities. And their collection of movies, they have everything from mainstream to had the entire Criterion collection streaming on there. I don't know where they're at with it now because obviously we have the Criterion channel. So, but Oren, when we were in Toronto, I watched the Andy Kaufman documentary, Thank You Very Much. And I thought that film was great. It's not streaming anywhere else. There's no DVD. Other than purchasing it, that film I absolutely loved. I thought it was better than Man on the Moon as far as telling Andy Kaufman's story. Sorry Not Sorry, the documentary about Louis C.K., Long Legs. There's all this small independent stuff. They've got Buster Keaton's on there right now. Also, it's streaming on Canopy is one of our favorites, Hundreds of Beavers.
Yeah, there you go.
Love it. When you endorsed that one, I was like, I love that movie. I got to see it when the filmmakers brought it to LA to screen it at the North Hollywood Laemmle. And it wasn't just like a Q&A, it was a party. I had no idea.
Do a whole show.
Yeah, it was the road show, and they had on my Instagram, I actually have a picture with one of the beavers from the lobby.
Awesome.
I have two bad endorsements. One is if you're trying to take a young kid to go see a movie like a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Rebirth, and you're worried that they'll be scared, it's a little trick. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but just ask someone like what all the scary parts are, and then just tell your kid all the scary parts before, So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was Matt, someone might have told me, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but not really a spoiler, that there is a severed arm and that it will be two people eaten by dinosaurs.
I think it was on the show.
Okay. Yeah. 2 people eaten by dinosaurs. Well, turns out there's 5 people eaten by dinosaurs. So 2 deaths we went through very easily. The next 3 were quite shocking because I was like, don't worry. We know that no one else is going to die.
Did you take
that made it worse?
9-year-old.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
But it's a good thing if you're like trying to mitigate fear in young children and scary movies, just to tell them all the bad stuff. So then she literally had a checklist. She's like, okay, so that's the severed arm. That's not as bad as I expected. It's like, okay, so everyone that died, because there's all these tense moments where a dinosaur is behind someone and you think they might die. But if going into the movie, you can already tell your kid, don't worry, they're going to be safe, then it's a little less scary. So, I mean, it ruins the movie for you, but that's a little hack. And then the second hack, this is stupid. This is like the worst endorsement I ever get. And this is worse than like iPhones are cool. Sometimes, you go to like an event, maybe it's not necessarily filmmakers or other things, just like some social event. You got to talk to a bunch of people and you got nothing to talk to them about. Like something that I really enjoy talking to people about is just like traffic etiquette. And I know Californians are kind of famous for talking about like what freeways they took to get into places. But today, as I was driving to this event, there was a pretty big truck that was like, not like a semi truck, but like, like
like
big
a box
SUV
truck
or something that was like kind of riding on like its left wheels, tires were on the middle lane, on the lane, on the lines between our lanes. And I was like, am I allowed to honk at these people for doing that? Like, or, I mean, they're not in my lane. They're just kind of drifting. Like, are you allowed to do like, is that like a nice polite honk or is this like a get out of my way honk? And so I kind of brought it up at this party and there was a long deliberation about traffic etiquette. So if you're looking to to talk to someone about something that you have nothing in common with. Rules of the road. I always find that kills. Everyone's got an opinion.
All right.
I mean,
Potentially my worst endorsement.
I think you can find. I think you can find out a little bit about people too when you have that conversation. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's a reflection on
you
that.
learn something about them for sure. Yeah. I would just reroute I'd just drive somewhere else.
Matt is like, forget it. It's your road. I'll just walk.
Yeah.
Oren, going back your 9-year-old to Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Did you say, hey, do you want to go? And she said, yes, but I'm afraid. Or you're like, come on, it'll be fine. I'll tell you what. Like, how does that go down between the two of you?
I'm like in a place in my life where I'm getting excited to show my daughter movies that I loved as a kid, you know? Mm-hmm. So like Back to the Future and Terminator and Jurassic Park and Spaceballs. And I'm just very excited about that era. And I know it's also like so short-lived. So I want to get in.
Yeah, she's not going to want to hang out with you pretty soon. Right.
So it's more me forcing her. I mean, she wants to see Megan. She wants to see some things, but I know that she'll like have nightmares, you know?
Yeah.
I bragged to Oren a little bit, but I've been able to have that with Julian since he's been about 5. For some reason, he is not afraid of movies, of scary movies. And one of the first films that he really like hooked into was Nope. And the reason is, well, you're not going to laugh when I tell you this next part. My son's African-American. He's adopted. He's Black. So I think that the representation was important because, you know, having a Black son, you'd start to realize like, shit, there's a lot of white on TV. I grew up, especially, you know, me in the 70s and 80s, I grew up with a lot of white on television. But it's also a really good film. But taking it a step further, so he was able to handle the scary parts. He liked the scary stuff to see what would happen to people. And I think one of the scariest parts in that film is when the kids next door are dressed up and they're running through the barn scaring the character OJ. But Julian, I had a digital download and Julian had watched it so much. He said to me, he says, what is that guy talking about when he's looking at them? And you remember the actor when he starts reciting the one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater lyrics? And he's saying that, he's just speaking those lines to OJ and his sister. And so when Julian asked me what that was, I explained to him it's a song and I played it for him. We had it on like a regular playlist because it's a fun, kitschy song. Sure. Yeah. And Julian said to me, he goes, Daddy, do you notice that laugh at the beginning of the song? He's 6 when he told me this. That laugh at the beginning of the song is the same noise from Nope when all those people get sucked up into the alien. I was like, I have a little cinephile.
Yeah. Your kid is connecting dots for you.
Yeah, it was.
And he's
that's
like,
great.
He's like, that said, the day for night is not that convenient.
Yeah, and no, but we've had conversations about whether the character of OJ was alive or not at the end of the film and what that meant. And you can't have a conversation at the level we would. It's definitely a child's conversation. You have to really, I don't want to say dumb it down, but and the other film that he really loved is I worked with Josh and John Baker, who go by the name Twin. They're a directing duo. And they made a film called Kin that I think Michael Jordan was the producer on it. And Julian absolutely loved that movie. And actually, after I had worked with them, I watched the film and he saw part of it. And again, I think he picked up on the representation. It was a young Black boy that grew up in a white family. And I think that really meant a lot to him. And it was nice to see that. But again, to see him.
I've been meaning to see that movie.
It's good. It's good.
It's based on a short too. Like I think it was like
they made a short film. That's right. Yeah. They made a short film. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
but
it's really rad.
But it really is something, having kids and seeing them develop. Like this time, like you said, Oren, you got this short window of time where you get to share your love of
where
something
you're relevant
with
to someone.
Yeah.
And they have no agency to push you away.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Thanks for chatting with us. Yeah, thanks for producing stuff with me. And if you guys have any thoughts on producing or endorsements or anything, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us across all social media at justshootitpod. I'm on Instagram at okaplan.
And I'm Mr. Matt Enlow. This episode was edited by Kevin O'Yang. Thanks, Kevin. Our social media producer is Lily Bouvier, and this episode was produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Giselle. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
And Tell Tyler I said hello.
Oh, yeah.